call the meeting to order. We're going to start off with Representative Sales will be leading us in prayer, and then we'll have Senator will lead us in the pledge.
Let's pray. Father, thank you for this absolutely beautiful day you've given us today. Thank you for the safe journeys you give us to get here today, and please allow us safe journeys back to our homes. Father, thank you for the opportunity you give us to serve the people of Alabama and to serve on this board, and all the blessings. In Jesus' name, amen.
Senator Price.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Senator Allen, Representative Baker, Chambliss, Chasteen, Madison, Elliott, Gavan, Hall, Harbison, Hollis, Lawrence, McCampbell, Milson, Paramore, Price, Lamb, Sells, Session, Shaver, Shedd, Singleton, Smith, Wagner, Wilcox, Wood. Madam Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Yes, announce your name.
I'm Roger Smitherman. I think we missed that name. We said Smith, but we didn't say it wasn't Roger Smitherman.
Okay,
So
Senator Smitherman, we got you. Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all, too.
Do we have someone else online that needs to be make sure we got you?
Kelvin Lawrence, Representative Lawrence.
Who?
Calvin Lawrence.
Oh, thank you, Representative Lawrence. We got you. Anybody else? Sounds like you're riding in the middle of the road. You're hitting them safety bumps. Who is that? All right, I haven't made it out. We'll go ahead and start with the business. Ed Austin, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Afternoon, members. You should have 3 pages in front of you. That's the 2025 fiscal year budget for ALDOT. We'll run through the numbers. These should look familiar to everyone, this same report that we generate every year. So reminding you that the anticipated funds shown in this project represent our top-end estimates, and we do that to minimize the need for supplemental appropriations during the course of the legislative session. So the numbers that are shown here are our top-end estimates on state funds, and it's the top end of the federal funds for both IIJA legacy and new programs. So you'll see that a little over $1 billion this year anticipated under our old legacy program funding categories, the original 7 that we've talked about in the past, about $118 million under the new programs. We've started this year under a continuing resolution. So sound like a broken record. We've done it every year for the past 4 years through IIJA. We have got a continuing resolution currently approved through Congress until December the 20th. So assuming that they do something to either extend that continuing resolution or fund the entire fiscal year prior to the 20th, we'll have to wait and see what Congress decides to do at that time. So December the 20th represents about 10 to 11 weeks of the 52-week year. So we get 10 to 11 52nds of our money. That's the extent of what we get based on the way the continuing resolution is set up. So state public road and bridge funds, we anticipate about $550 million. Rebuild Alabama Act, about $240 million. This was the first year of the indexing that occurred based on the way the law was written. So that number went up a little bit this year. We're anticipating it to be about $240. Appalachian Development Highway System, about $74 million. That is money that is designated for projects on the Appalachian Development Highway System corridor, which is for Alabama's just basically the Birmingham North Belt line. So that's what this money is designated for. Then our aeronautics division gets about $78 million. So that's the anticipated federal funds. As we've talked about in the past, there are appropriations and transfers that come out of both our state public road and bridge funds and the Rebuild Alabama Act. So we'll go through the state public road and bridge appropriations first.
Oh, can you hang on? We got a question on
Sure.
that section.
Before we go, on the Rebuild Alabama, what was the number last year? Do you remember?
about 30 million on average, and the state gets 8/12 of that or thereabouts. So we anticipate about a $20 million increase to the state. So back to the appropriations and transfers from the state public road and bridge account. There's a $1.2 million appropriation from to ALEA. Industrial Access Road and Bridge Corporation is $11 million every year and has been for several decades now. County engineer supports salary support. That changes every year, but this year, based on the information that we've received from the counties, we anticipate that to be a little over $8.8 million this year. Revenue Department, just under $3 million. State personnel, again, $2.9 million. State park maintenance, as required by code, is $500,000, and our captive county insurance, again, required by code, is about $75,000 this year is what we're anticipating. So that makes the appropriations and transfers about $27.5 million, and you'll see that on a subsequent page where we reference that number. For the Rebuild Alabama Act, A-Trip 2 for fiscal year 25 is already been set at $40 million. Call for applications began in August, and the deadline for submitting those applications is November the 15th. The local grant program, we increased it last year from $10 million to $15. We anticipate keeping it at $15 again this year. That was well received. Last year with the $15 million was the largest application response we've ever received in that program's 5-year history. So increasing that $5 million really had a major impact for that program. And then the county federal aid exchange, the $26.8 million that we do every year with the counties. So the Rebuild Alabama Act fund appropriations is $81.8, and again, I'll reference that in a subsequent page. Excuse me. So the second page, you'll see the federal funds. So the amount of federal funds that comes to ALDOT, there's $141.5 million approximately that goes to aid local governments. That's for our MPOs, the CMAQ program, TAP, those kinds of things. So the county federal aid balance is remaining. When the Rebuild Alabama Act passed, we stopped giving federal money to the counties and started giving them rebuild money. There's still a little bit of money that's outstanding, a little over $300,000 that counties are trying to clear off their books. So that's been coming down dramatically in the last couple of years. So we're just about finished that. Yes, sir. No, so there's other things as well. So MPOs, our CMAQ, Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, TAP, safety, planning, rec trails. There's probably some others. That's everything I can think of off the top of my head, Representative Moore. But there are several things. MPOs are by far the largest portion of that $141 million, but there are other things that come out. Okay. So Garvey bond for the old A-Trip 1 program is about $64 million. The Garvey bond debt payment for the CBD in Birmingham is about $45.5. The safety program is about $66.5. Interstate maintenance, $180 million. State route resurfacing, about $232 million. System enhancement this year, we're planning for $170 million. Bridge replacement, $91 million. Statewide planning, about $20 million. And then, so that's the legacy programs, and these next several are the new programs that we've talked about in the past. Carbon reduction this year is a little over $26 million. Protect, which is a resiliency-based program, is right at $30 million. Bridge formula is $45 million. It will be $45 every year of IIJA. That's based on the number of bridges that we had that was in a classification of a certain level. So we get $45 million a year. NEVI, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, just under $17 million. And ADECA, as a reminder, serves as the lead for that program. They're handling the NEVI program as well as the state funds that the legislature has appropriated for electric vehicle charging. And then ferry boats and terminals, $335,000 this year. So those federal funds that are programmable is $1.128 billion, and that's a breakdown for those. Next category is state public road and bridge funds. For the federal aid match, about $191 million. So the Garvey bond that we were talking about in the federal program a moment ago, there's a state component that has to go to that for match. For the original A-TRIP program is a little over $2 million, and for the CBD program, about $1.65 million. The next several are maintenance categories. Our routine maintenance is $157.5 million. State roadway maintenance, $5 million. The preliminary engineering for maintenance resurfacing is $5 million. State bridge maintenance, $6.5 million. State traffic maintenance, $2.5 million. Miscellaneous maintenance, $3.5 million. And emergency maintenance, $5 million. State construction, we've identified about $22 million this year programmed. Administrative overhead, that's for personnel and fringe costs that's not eligible for recovery through our federal aid program, is about $95 million. Other equipment, $12 million. Land and building, $9 million. What we pay the state comptroller is about $570,000. Insurance and maintenance plans is $1.5 million. Division of procurement, this is ALDOT's share of the maintenance costs for the Alabama Buys e-procurement service or system, it's $191,000. And then Division of Risk Management for property and auto insurance for ALDOT's facilities and fleet is about $2.35 million. Those add up to a little over $522. The appropriations and transfers that we went over a minute ago bring the total to $550. Then the last section is the Rebuild Alabama Act funds for this year. Excuse me. Our federal aid funds to match, we're expecting a little over $19 million this year. And then congestion relief, economic development, we're just showing an even distribution between those two with the ability to move from one program to the other as needed at 69.5. As we've talked about in the past, we do not plan on using any of this money for system preservation yet, and so we're showing zero. That adds up to $158.2 million. The appropriations that we went over on the first page earlier of 81.8 brings the $240 million total. And Madam Chair, it's the report. If there's any other questions.
Senator Coleman Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can you give me an idea of what's under state construction, a breakout a little bit of what that includes?
So that would be projects where we use state funds to do construction on particular projects. We don't have any specific projects programmed. What we do with that one, Senator, is we look at what we've done in past years. It's been around 20 to 25 million that we've spent that money on in the past, and so we would expect to use a similar amount this year.
So this is basically an estimate based on previous history or past records of what you spend on an annual basis?
Correct. For that category, it is, yes, ma'am.
Okay. At the bottom, the Rebuild Alabama Act Fund, this is monies, the total here, our match for this money.
So which one are we talking about, Senator?
Well,
the last page?
The last, yeah. The
Okay.
Rebuild Alabama.
So there will be some, so there's $19.2 million for federal aid funds matching. So there will be some federal funds that we use that are eligible for, that we use Rebuild Alabama Act funds to match with. So we think that'll be about $19.2 million this year.
Okay.
And then everything that's left, we just divide those between the last two categories of congestion relief and economic development.
Okay.
All right.
The
Senator
last time,
Grant?
Madam Chairman, I'm sorry, but the last time we asked, did we ever get a report on the bridge maintenance?
So there was a question about how many bridges were posted, and we sent that information. I don't know that I recall. Did we get a question for maintenance of bridges? I'm sorry if we missed that question, Senator. Could you refresh my memory, because I don't remember
We're
that.
just trying to find out where we were as far as the maintenance for bridges.
So we're about to have a presentation by Mr. George Connor. I think he's going to talk about that. I think he might answer a lot of your questions, and if not, if you don't mind, let us know what your question is when we
Okay,
finish,
thank
and
you.
we'll make sure and get you something on that. So thank you.
Senator Gavan, you have a question?
Thank you. So I've heard some things in the press about the Birmingham Beltline, the northern portion of that, which that would be, I guess, a ARC project. And my question for that is that if that goes forward, is that just federal funds, or is there a state match to that? I just wanted an explanation about what Alabama's contribution to that would be, if anything.
Yes, sir. So ARC funds are eligible 100%. So there's been some discussion with some of the local governments in the Birmingham, Jefferson County area about providing some additional money, but there is not a state match component required for that. No, sir. It can be 100% funded through ARC. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Chairman Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This goes back on the federal funds. Just a little bit curious on the carbon reduction program. Any breakdown on that, on what type of projects that would include? Or
So what we've spent some of that money on in the past are things like auxiliary lanes on interstates. At one point, we were spending some of our carbon reduction money, Representative, on our traffic operations centers to help move people away from congested areas to deal with improving carbon emissions as a result of cars not sitting in traffic. But so we've used them for several projects like that as well. Yes, sir.
Representative Baker, in Mobile, we've timed all the lights, so they're starting the project where, especially down Airport Boulevard and some of the major thoroughfares, that the smart technology, and I was shocked at what a long process that is. So they're doing it in small bites. So the first bite is the indicator that cars are there, because this the old magnetic system,
Right.
and now technology has gone further. So the first thing they're doing in our area with that money is updating to the technology to
The
recognize
equipment and
it.
the technology, that's right.
And then they'll go to the signalization. But I know that we have toured the Tuscaloosa Transportation Project, which I think we all agree was phenomenal. And we've touched on it in Mobile. We went and saw some of what they were doing underneath the tunnel. But it really is a lot better than building lanes, just moving traffic smarter. All right, any further questions of Mr. Austin? Anybody
Madam Chair.
online?
Madam Chair,
Announce your name.
Senator Elliott.
Thank you, Senator Elliott. What's your question?
I had a quick question about industrial access funds. Ed, that's $11 million a year. Can you tell us what the balance in that account is?
Off the top of my head, Senator, I don't want to tell you for sure. I think we had a meeting about 3 weeks ago. If you don't hold me to this number, we were at about 11 or 12 million, and then we added an $11 million appropriation, and then I think we did about 3 to 4 million. So it's going to be in the $18 to $20 million range. But if you'll afford me the chance to get back to the office, I can get you that number confirmed if you like, and email that to you.
That will be fine, sir. I'm just glad to see it getting spent down some, because I know at some point we were carrying several years worth of appropriations in there, but that's good to hear it getting spent.
Well, we're working on it. What really was the biggest two issues, one was the COVID year when we had one meeting that year, and that was it, but we still got a full year's appropriation. And I think the one meeting we had occurred after COVID issues had hit, and we only allocated $1 million or $2 million. So we basically had $9 to $10 million carried over in the COVID year. And we've just been slowly trying to put a dent in that year's balance that never got appropriated because we had to cancel the subsequent meetings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Ed.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other further questions from the members present or online? Okay, thank you, Mr. Austin.
Thank you.
Mr. George Connor, you're up. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name's George Connor. I'm Deputy Director for Operations at Alabama DOT. My background is in our maintenance and operations areas, and I am presenting today some information related to our ALDOT bridge program, from our inventory, how we manage it, the way we maintain it, to how we develop our bridge replacement projects and administer those programs. This is derived from a longer presentation that was given to some of the chairs earlier, but so there are slides here that you may recognize. One of the things to understand is the size of the inventory that the state of Alabama deals with bridges. We have over 16,000 structures in the state of Alabama that are on a public highway that meet the federal definition of a bridge structure, which is a clear span of 20 feet or greater in the direction of traffic. The state has about 36%, a little over 1/3 of all the bridges, but those bridges carry or contain about 3/4 of all the deck surface area. So the large, big bridges are with the state. Counties carry the most number of bridges, but by the nature of the roads that they're on, they tend to be smaller in number. Alabama's inventory ranking in the nation, though, we have the 15th largest inventory of bridges for any state in the country. The Texas dwarfs everybody. Illinois, North Carolina comes in about 12th, but Alabama's 15th. And that is a reflection of our geology and geography to have so many crossings, be such a water-rich state. The requirements for how we administer our bridge program come from federal regulation, CFR 23, Section 650, Subpart D, and the different subsections within that. It administers, it mandates many different things related to bridges, but most importantly, most foundationally, it mandates that our bridge inspection program has to meet federal minimums, and I'm happy to report that we do that and exceed them. But one of the requirements is that all bridges, if they're open to public traffic and they're more than 20 feet in length, must be inspected by a certified bridge inspector who has successfully passed the course that you see up here and has the requisite experience. This applies not just to ALDOT bridges, but to all local governments as well, county and municipal. Their bridges are subject to the same inspection and reporting requirements. At the bottom, part of that 23 CFR 650 is a set of requirements for what we inspect, how we record it, how we report it, and specific requirements for things like scour, which is water, fast-moving water, removing the material that holds a bridge up, and load rating, and I'll cover those in a little more detail. This is an example of an extreme case, but it's a good illustration of a bridge scour. All of that material was removed in one high water event, and that bridge was at risk of becoming unstable. Nationally, the #1 attributable cause for catastrophic bridge failure is due to scour. That it is very important, and all of our bridges that are susceptible to scour have a action plan for either how we mitigate and make them immune to scour or how we treat them during a high water event, as the case may be. On the right, this is a module that ALDOT has developed over the years, and it is a leader in the country of how we record, monitor, and keep up with the scour soundings and elevation readings that are done over the life of that bridge. In this case, the vertical green lines and the little feet at the bottom represent the piles and the tips of those piles. And you can see at a glance that historically over time, the scour bottom of that channel has moved as water has gone back and forth and flood events happen, but we haven't reached the tip yet. There are calculated scour maximums, and we identify those. They're not happen to be plotted on this module, but this is something that the department uses regularly and makes available to all of our bridge owners, regardless of their affiliation. The other big piece that's required that takes a lot of effort is determining safe load capacity for bridges. Many of you are familiar with bridge posting signs. You know, this is the weight limit for this bridge. And according to statute, if such a sign is erected, that is the maximum that can legally pass that bridge. Those limits are determined by rigorous structural analysis or based on some risk profile analysis determined by the condition of the structure that's there. In this case, this is in the upper left is an example of a sheet, bridge information, and engineers at the department take that information and produce in these graphical images. These are representations of the physical of the digital model of that bridge. And it's useful not only for the calculated ratings, but we use it in issuing oversized, overweight permits, in that we make sure the routing and the truck that's going across a bridge will not exceed the safe load carrying capacity of that structure. When we have all of that information, yes, sir.
Good question. Are those the ratings
It's the second
ever
time he's done that.
reevaluated?
Yes. So there are procedural triggers for when that has to be done. So inspections are done at a minimum every 2 years, and there are a number of cases where it's done more often. And if that inspection shows change significant enough, that triggers a reevaluation. If there's been damage to the bridge, it triggers a reevaluation. And there's a number of other conditions that can happen that trigger that as well. What you see here is an example of the standardized way in which we record and report this data. It is reported not only for our own use internally managing bridges, but it is reported to Federal Highway and is available nationally on the inventory. So these are dimensions, clearances, the type. This slide shows the inspection information, what those inspectors do. You can see different condition assessment scores for the different elements of the bridge. We take this information from the inspection, from the inventory data, and we start to develop then a program for what bridges should be replaced and the order in which we prioritize them to be replaced. Some of the things that are very important are listed on the slide here. On the information side, the inventory, that's dimension, that's construction type, that sort of thing. The age of the bridge, the geometry, condition of it, the load rating status. Bridges that are posted or that are very narrow are higher in priority than those that are safely carrying full legal loads and have plenty of width. And vehicle counts, right? High traffic bridges, small defects in high traffic bridges are more critical than a more severe defect in a very low volume bridge, and it's reflected. On the right-hand side are the qualitative things that are not so easily put into a database. Things like the traffic congestion, the safety, the history of that structure, freight movement, and economic development also play a part.
Question, Madam Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask you, in reference to what you have, the slide that you have up now, the question on scouring and make sure I understand it, because as I understand it, this is where the water level gets so low, I guess it erodes the foundation or the pilings where it is.
It's the other way around. It gets so high and moves so fast, it removes all that material. And then when the water goes down, you can see what it took away.
Okay. And I'm looking at a particular bridge in Birmingham, which is on Village Creek. The part of the issue is all of the debris and everything that it brings, because it's a 23-mile creek, and it flows along going west, and all of that. It has caused an issue where, people have had to be relocated because the water actually flows over the bridge when it actually builds up like that, gets so high, and so the road is shut down. And after this, I'd like to talk with you to find out, what are the options under either programs that you have that we might look at doing something about that.
Be happy to.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
One of the things that we use is developed by the University of Alabama, 1991, underwent major renovation or upgrade in 2009, is a deficiency ranking algorithm that is our attempt to take that hard data that we know about the bridge and to make rational comparisons between structures to help make the first step in setting what those priorities should be. When we take that information, we go to each of our regions and sit down with that initial priority that came out of the numerically based process. And we look at the other issues that were there, the congestion, safety and history of crashes, freight movement, and economic development, what might be coming up that would prompt a decision about a particular bridge. Those two sets of data, the hard calculated numbers and those other ones that are important but not as easily digitized, if you will, made into a digital form, are combined in this report. This particular one is for our East Central region, which is our Birmingham and Alex City areas. This report is updated every year. It's an annual update. Obviously, projects that are in development or have been let come off, other bridges rise up in priority because of findings that happened during the year or developments that may have happened external to the bridge during that same time period. When you come and start a bridge project, right, we have this priority list. We're working that list. There's a number of things that our designers struggle with. They're a challenge to develop then a bridge project that can be advertised and let. Among those things are make a decision about, do we replace or we rehabilitate? Replace in federal definition is that you put a bridge back where it was within reason. It's within the same corridor. It might be off to the side or it might be in exactly the same place, but you have removed a structure, you've put a structure back. Rehabilitation is there's enough about that structure that economically and operationally it makes sense to repair it, to do a major reconstruction of parts of it, but leave the rest of it in place. We've had a number of bridges where our primary issue in many of our bridges has been on deck deterioration, and so hydro demolition and deck replacements with a latex modified concrete have become very effective, very popular, and very useful in extending the life of a bridge significantly without the full expense of a replacement. But if it is a full replacement and that bridge geometry changes or realignment, some small realignment happens in order to make it traffic flow more safely and smoothly, you have things like, do I have to acquire right-of-way? I need geotechnical investigations to know what I need to build for my foundations. What utilities do I have to relocate? Utilities are always a big challenge in any of our projects where you're not going back in exactly one for one the same footprint. Foundation types, is it a driven pile? Is it spread footing? Is it a drilled shaft? Span arrangements, environmental considerations, very critical. You can see I listed 4 of the different agencies that we commonly deal with related to environmental, cultural resources, historical issues as well. And some of those are very lengthy and challenging to navigate. If that bridge is near or crosses a railroad, we say a prayer when we deal with that. That can be very challenging as well. And then it's important that, especially if you're doing a full replacement, to the best of our ability is to come up with a traffic operation scheme, a maintenance of traffic scheme, and a phasing scheme that maintains as much as possible access to those businesses that are nearby and impacted while the project's going on. It's not impact-free, but we put a substantial effort in to minimize the impact as much as possible. Ed covered about bridge replacement funding, and so this is not meant to be a substitute for that, but that formula-based funding is about 90, I think his sheet said $91 million in federal dollars. It's important because it's formula-based. It allows multi-year planning because we have a pretty good idea of what could be available each year. There's additional federal funds available. The IIJA bridge program, $45 million a year. We're in the 4th year of this bill for that, and that's been a big help. And to the extent that it's part of those congestion projects and others that Ed showed where we're spending rebuild money, rebuild monies have also built new bridges or replaced them if they're a part of those kinds of projects. But there are challenges also on the funding side that the department routinely navigates. Our recent inflation, especially in highway construction side of the world, has negated the beneficial impact of much of the increase of funding that's been available. In one way, if we had not had that increase, our program would have had the net effect of shrinking because inflation in the last several years has been that extensive. Current federal transportation bill has significant discretionary grant programs, meaning you apply for them, and if you get one, it's a good day. But for every entity that gets a grant, there are many that don't. It's hard to plan for those. Alabama has been very fortunate in that we got that significant grant for Mobile River Bridge. Very happy to get that. That was a lot of hard work by a lot of people. But that is most of the grants that we go for, we are not successful. Replacing bridges on high volume roadways with lots of traffic is time consuming, it's expensive, and it's difficult. Managing scope creep. Every time we do work in a particular area, both our own folks, but as external stakeholders, while you're here, wouldn't it be good to do this thing? That's a legitimate need, but to that extent, it increases the right-of-way you have to purchase, and that triggers all of those things that I listed before on how you develop a bridge program. And our aging bridge infrastructure is a challenge looking ahead. I want to show you this particular slide. The top graph, those bars, represent the number of bridges in the state system. This is ALDOT's 5,800 plus or minus bridges. The number of bridges by age category. And you can see that we have the largest number, about 1,100 bridges that are in the 55 to 64 year of age range. In general, we have a lot of bridges in inventory that were designed for a 50-year lifespan. Currently, 75-year lifespan is the norm for design, and for very critical bridges such as the Mobile River Bridge, it has a required 100-year lifespan. But most of these structures that are in that 55 to 64-year bucket were designed for a 50-year lifespan, and they are already past that. The maintenance that we do has extended the life of those structures, and I've got some success stories to show you here in a minute about our maintenance operations. But the challenge is in front of us is that even if we extend their life, we are getting closer to the end of their life every year. And that's a large number of structures that we're going to deal with. The bottom is the same set of bridges, but it's showing the deck area that's represented in each of those buckets. And you can see that in that 45 to 54 year range, cost of a bridge is directly related to the size of that bridge, i.e. the deck area. Therefore, we have another bucket of bridges about 9 years behind the one I just talked about that is a concern coming up. So what I've put the red box around here is the category, or it's the tranche, it's the subgroup of structures that in their time of life are getting to the point where it's costing more to maintain them, and eventually we'll have replacement needs that are greater than the needs that we're dealing with now in the priorities that we set. But I do want to talk about some of the things that we're doing very successfully.
I just wanted to make sure I understood exactly what you said. You said the bottom tier represented the debt?
Deck area.
Deck area.
It's the square footage of the bridge decks in total. So.
Saying debt, D-E-B-T.
Deck, E-E-C-K, deck.
Okay, explain that to me.
The deck is the part you drive on.
Okay.
That's what carries lane. So the bridge has supports, it has beams, and then a deck is poured on top of those beams, and we drive on the deck.
Okay. So are you saying that as compared to as far as the replacement part of that, the bottom tier represents that? I'm trying to get the
what I'm saying is a bridge that is twice as long as some other bridge has twice the deck area, and the bigger the bridge, the more expensive it is to replace it. So that's the correlation that I'm trying to make here. I think I have just a couple more slides here. This is one of the things that's in those federal definitions, if we go back to the 23 CFR 650, is there are definitions of what a structurally deficient bridge is. And if you have trouble sleeping, I will send you that definition and you can keep it by your bedside. But if we apply that, every year we report to the feds the number of bridges that meet that definition of structurally deficient. The definition's a little bit broad. I don't want to unnecessarily alarm anybody that because something is classified as structurally deficient, it means it's at risk of causing harm to the public or falling. There are a lot of things that categorize it as structurally deficient that we manage and keep that bridge in a very safe operating condition. But if you notice here in 2007, the state of Alabama, ALDOT's bridge inventory, we had 213 bridges that were classified as structurally deficient. And under that same definition, in 2023, that was down to 62 bridges. So that's through a variety of different things, bridge replacement projects that we've talked about, the maintenance that we do on them, and the rehabilitation, like many of those deck rehab jobs have helped tremendously with that. This is another metric. It's not a federal definition, but this is more real life. That map on the left, we produce this map on a regular basis showing all of the posted bridges on state routes throughout the state. And it shows not only the bridge and where it's located and information about the bridge, but it indicates the route that then is restricted from full freight movement, because they can carry less than what's legal according to the Code of Alabama. I wish I had used a different highlighter on the map on the left, but if you pay close attention, there are a lot of yellow smudges. In 1994, there were 220 posted bridges, weight-restricted bridges on the state system. This is not counting county or municipal. This is on the state system. In 2024, at the beginning of this year, we are down to 5. So we have made tremendous progress through a variety of methods, through replacements. We have done load testing where we instrument bridges with strain gauges and other devices, load those bridges, measure the response, and compare it to the theoretical. We have done strengthening projects. We've done different rehab projects. There are a number of things that we've done in total that have dropped that tremendously from 220 in 30 years down to 5. And the ones that remain are ones that, by the nature of their location and what is going on them, they are pretty low priority because they're not impacting other stuff. But eventually they'll get their day as well. So that's the end of what I have. I thank you very much for your attention. And Madam Chair, stand for questions.
Well, I guess my first thing is not a question, it's more of a recognition on the good work that ALDOT did when we had the bridge on I-85 that was heavily damaged and shut down overnight. So any of the members want to hear how quickly, what was the time frame from the accident to when y'all got it back and functional?
So back to fully functional, I think was about 2 weeks, but back to the interstate being opened and unrestricted was about a day. If y'all remember, it was an overpass. It went over the interstate. A truck carrying lumber crashed. There was some fire damage and a lot of impact damage. We were very fortunate on that bridge because of the nature of its construction that it stayed up in the air even though the supports came out from underneath it. Our first action, our local area office, closed that bridge to all traffic above. That was probably the preemptive action that preserved that structure from being damaged further. And then between our people and contractor community that responded to this emergency request, we had it back fully repaired. And when I say 2 weeks, that included miscellaneous work that was important, but the bridge was restored to its capacity in probably about a half to 2/3 of that 2 weeks.
I just wanted y'all to recognize that was some incredible coordination and some work on behalf ALDOT did on behalf of the citizens and making sure that that important thoroughfare, and no lives were lost, right? except for the one person in the accident?
I don't think the driver was, I don't recall if the driver was
Okay.
killed or not. I don't think he was injured, but nobody else was injured because the bridge stayed up in the air. And I would say one of the things that helped us in that response is that was not our first rodeo in dealing with that kind of problem all over the state. It happens. Trucks run into things and they damage them severely. And so we have experience in that, and we were very happy that we could use that for something bad that happened. We're very happy we could use that experience to make it go smoothly.
Right. Well, thank you again, and pass it down to the committee's
ma'am.
respect for everybody that contributed to that work.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I just have one. I just wonder how many of these bridges, since you've got the numbers down so low from over 200 to 5 that are safe, how many of these bridges were, well, how many school buses were impacted? Because at one time, especially in rural areas,